Assalamu alaikum, grade 10s. Today we're doing creditors allowance journal. Okay, yesterday we did the creditors journal. Today we're doing creditors allowance journal, right? So now I've done a small drawing for you here so you can have a look at what's happening. If, for example, we are company A and we go to B, which is a store, and we go and buy some goods, but we don't pay for it cash, we take the goods on credit. So B becomes our creditor, right? So we're buying goods on credit. So that means we haven't paid any cash for it. We took the goods for us and they give us an invoice. And I just use an example of an invoice here with 300 Rand. Okay, so 300 Rand will be on my invoice, and this invoice is showing me that I am owing B that 300 Rand. Okay, so I have to keep it as a liability in my books. That's why we enter it into the creditors journal. We keep record of it in the creditors journal, and then we're posting it to the creditors control account to show that we are owing that money, we haven't paid that money. Now what happens is sometimes some of the goods on this invoice here, it can be damaged, or it can be the wrong order. It means, like, for example, if I ordered some Stay Soft and I got Surf or something like that, it would be a wrong order and I would want to send it back and change the order. Or they've overcharged me on my invoice, which means my invoice is supposed to only be 200 Rand if I calculated what I was buying, and they've charged me 300 Rand, right? So what is happening now is we're not going to leave it like that. We're going to complain. We're going to send the damaged goods back. We're going to send the order back, and we're going to ask them to either, or if they don't have the right things, they're going to change it for us for some other goods, or they're going to cancel our invoice, and we have to complain to the creditor. So what is happening? We're going back to the creditor with that invoice, and what we do is we sending the goods back, and we create a debit note for the goods that are returned, right? So we draw out a debit note. There's a nice example here that I want you to look at. Okay, so on page 133 there's an example there of a debit note, right? So you'll see it's written the creditors allowance journal. This is an example of a debit note. Look, there's all the details of the company there, the address and the date, and then the number 125, right? And what they're doing is debit note to express dealers. So what they're doing is our company is sending them, and according to the invoice number P7891 dated 25th August, the men's shirts are not according to order, right? 90 units, the value was 180 Rand. So we're filling out a debit note, and we're taking the debit note and sending it to the creditor with these shirts here, right? And what eventually is going to happen, that this debit note here is going to be used to fill in our creditors allowance journal. So why do we have a creditors allowance journal? Is we're going to take those debit notes and we're going to put it into the creditors allowance journal for any returns or damaged goods or anything. And what happens eventually is that my liability is going to decrease, right? Okay, so first of all, my invoices go to my creditors journal, and it's the amount owing, right? Then my debit notes is when I filled out a debit note and any of those invoices there, I want to return it to my creditor. These ones are the amounts returned. Okay, so your creditors allowance journal is actually making these invoices less, so it's making the amount you are owing your creditor less, right? So we're going to go through the transactions and then you're going to be able to understand it. So let's go to page 134. I'm going to go through exercise 5.7 with you, right? So in your textbook, we're on page 134, and there's a nice example here, and I just want to go through this example with you so it'll be easy for you to understand how to do the creditors allowance journal. So let's read through this. You remember the one we did in the other video? We were doing 5.4, which had the Sonia Cafe, and she's buying on credit, and we had to go through all the journal entries and the ledger entries there. So it's the same one, but they've added some returns to it. Okay, so we're going through task 5.7. So what it's saying is the following are some of the transactions at Sonia's Cafe during January. So we're working with January. Record the following transactions in the correct columns as per example of Sonia's Cafe, right? Document, journal, account debit, account credit. Okay, so ignore that for now. We're not doing the accounting transaction for now. I want to concentrate on the creditors journal and the creditors allowance journal. So on the 9th, if you look at the first transaction there, on the 9th, bought merchandise on credit from Sparky for 400 Rand, right? So now what did we do there? We have an invoice. Can you see what's important? We have an invoice there. Okay, and what it's telling us is that I've bought on credit. So where must I go to? I need to go to my creditors journal. So let's go to our creditors journal, right? So here it says Sonia's Cafe creditors journal for January. And remember your folio, you've named it CJ1. So we have all these headings here where we have to put in the invoice, the date, the creditor, who did we buy from, right? Then we have our creditors control for the total amounts of all the purchases that we've made on credit, and then we're dividing it into what did I buy that for, paid, what did I take that 400 Rand for. So in the first one, right, I've got invoice number X4, which is coming from my transaction there. The date is the 9th. My creditor is Sparky and Company. We're going to do the folios just now, and then I'm going to put 400 Rand owing in my creditors control account. And what was it for? It was trading stock, right? Okay, now the second one is saying, let's go to the second transaction now. The second transaction is saying Sonia's Cafe complained to Sparky and Co. that the trade discount of 40 Rand was not deducted by them on the invoice issued on the 9th. Sent them a debit note J9 for this amount. So this is the important one where we need to see what it's telling us. First of all, the debit note, the source document is telling you where to go, right? And also the word that the trade discount was not deducted. So it's a complaint here. Can you see there's something wrong? Okay, so we're not just buying some goods. So where must I go to? I need to put this into the creditors allowance journal. So if I go to my creditors allowance journal, you'll see all the headings are the same as that. So I've got creditors allowance journal for January, and we've written the folio as CAJ1. So now on the 10th, what has happened on the 10th, right? On the 10th, I've put my creditor in as Sparky, right? We've sent them a debit note number of J9, right? So we sent them a debit note number of J9, and we've put 40 Rand into the creditors control account and 40 Rand into the trading stock account. So eventually you'll see when we do the entries for the creditors allowance journal, this amount of the 40 Rand is getting minused from this 400 Rand here, right? So the creditors allowance journal is taking away 40 Rand discount that they're supposed to have been given here. They didn't give us the discount, so we're claiming the discount here. So we put in a debit note and we put it into the creditors allowance journal, right? Let's go through number 15. Number 15 is what we've done before. Receive the following on credit from Mako Suppliers. Suppliers invoice B2, equipment 1200 and stationery 800, right? So if we go to the 15th, which journal am I going to go to? Here's my invoice. Okay, here's my word telling me that I've bought on credit. So that's why I have to go to my creditors journal. So now I have bought on credit. So I need to go to the creditors journal, right? Later on, your transactions become mixed up where they give you where you are buying on credit and where your debtors are buying from you. So you have to try to distinguish between the two. Although you'll see invoices for both of them, that you have to see that if you are buying on credit, then you are owing the money, and then we go to the creditors journal, right? So for the 15th from Mako, I've put in my invoice number, my date, my creditor, And now my creditors control, I've put the total amount of the 1200 plus the 800, and then I've separated it into 1200 equipment and 800 stationery. Now let's look what happened on the 17th, right? On the 17th, return 150 Rand worth stationery to Macro Supplies as it was unsuitable and issued them a debit note number 10. What is it telling us here? The word returned is telling us that it went back to them. It was unsuitable. Again, we're complaining and we have a debit note. So where am I going to go? This is telling me to go to my creditors allowance journal. So if I go to my creditors allowance journal, I've got J10 as my debit note. The date is the 17th. Macro Supplies. And my creditors control, how much am I putting in? 150 Rand worth that I want to return. And what was it for? The stationery. So what is happening here? Eventually, this amount here will be minused with this 150 Rand. We're no longer going to owe them the 150 Rand, so we've put it into our creditors allowance journal and we've sent them a debit note, right? So on the 24th, Alco Services undertook repairs to the refrigerators for Sonia Scathy, 190 Rand, received a credit invoice from them for the amount owing. So this is not trading stock. It means on the 24th, we have got repairs done to our fridges. The amount was 190 Rand. Here's my invoice. There's the word telling me that it's a credit invoice, so I'm owing them the money. So what do? I have to put it into the creditors journal. So if I go to the 24th here, what have I done? On the 24th, I've put in my invoice number, my date, my creditor, the amount that I'm owing in total, and then 190 Rand in repairs. Why do I have repairs in my sundry accounts? Because there's no columns for it, so I've put it into my repairs. Then we've simply totaled up all these ones here, right? Now in our creditors allowance journal is also complete. So what we've done is we have totaled all of these ones up here.